Hey everybody, so I'm here with Kate Reed from Home for the Highly Sensitive. She is a sensitivity and addiction specialist, and today she's going to talk to us about the intersection of sensitivity and food and eating habits. When people ask you about sensitivity, like how do you explain it? Because this is something you and I have talked about a lot, and I recently found out about, and it really affects our relationship with food and cravings and our eating habits, right? But what is it?
What is it? It's a good question. Most people, when they hear the word sensitivity, they think super emotional, somebody who cries a lot. And while those are certainly could be aspects of being a highly sensitive person, it's not just that. The trait of high sensitivity is, in fact, a real genetic trait that 1 in 5 of us have, so 20% of the population. And this information of being a highly sensitive person is so profound when those who sort of been feeling different their whole lives figure out, oh, wait, I'm not crazy, I'm just highly sensitive. And there's the best way I think to describe it is with the mnemonic device DOES. The first trait is depth of processing. So we don't just walk into a room and see who's in the room. We feel everything that's going on in that room. We pick up on the way that people are feeling, the energetics of the space, the wallpaper colors, just inundated with information. The second one is over-arousability. So because we're picking up on so much, because our nervous systems are that much more open, we become more over-aroused. So again, for the example of walking into a room, it's the feeling of, I got to get out of here, that urgency that's like, too much, what should I do?
Right.
The next one is emotional sensitivity. So we are more sensitive to our emotions. They can feel like tidal waves and we just kind of flop around in them. And the last one is sensory sensitivity. So think clothing tags, lighting, sugar, caffeine, loud chewers, anything that's that really throws us off. So those are like the 4 main qualities of the trait that I think in a nutshell you can look at and say, do I fall into those categories?
Yeah, and I know for some of us, like I'm a highly sensitive person. I didn't even know that I was. I thought everybody kind of like was always feeling what other people were feeling in a room, or kind of picking up on just certain like traits, or like we're very overwhelmed by, a lot of stimulation. Like we were just talking about how I was in New York City and it was like, oh my God, what is going on here? And I thought, that was just kind of how everybody was. And even drinking caffeine, it really affects me too, where I'm like, do you guys feel crazy? Like, did you just like, this coffee is like really strong. And it's like, no, just feel like I drink coffee. And I was like, it would just like amplify everything. So it can feel like that, right? For somebody who is highly sensitive, who might not even know it. It's just, you feel a lot more, it sounds like, of what's going on around you. You process a lot more.
Yeah, and that's the trip. It's so familiar to us. We think that everybody's like that.
Yeah.
But when we look to our left and our right, because we're, only 20% of the population, the left and the right are fine drinking the coffee and eating the pizza and going to parties over and over and over. And we think we're like, what's wrong with us? Which kind of puts us in the, fixer or striving, or I got to fix this part of me that can't hang, that can't digest, that's reaching for things to stay grounded.
Right.
And that's the trip, because it's our temperament, it's our disposition. It's not something that we fix. It's something that we learn to live with, which is why it's such a big part of the work with, people who struggle with food or people who struggle with any addiction, because unless they know this aspect of themselves, they'll forever try to fix it.
Right. Like for me, I actually didn't know I was sensitive. So I was just looking at the behaviors and I'm like, why do I drink so much when I'm out? Or like, why every time I give a presentation or do a big thing at work, I feel like I need to like eat a bunch of food to like treat myself. So I just thought I had issues with like, oh, you need to like eat and drink less and then you'll lose weight and all this kind of thing. But it turned out I was actually using wine at a party to like calm me down because it was so overwhelming and I was so uncomfortable inside just from the sensitivity, right? Or like things like being in front of a lot of people or having a hard day at work can be so intense that like you do need to kind of self-soothe in a way with the food, right? So is this common for sensitives, like that they maybe eat or drink or go to different like compulsions or even addictions? Like, is that part of the
Yes,
trait?
it's very much so.
Yeah.
I would go out on a limb and say anyone who's struggling with an addiction falls somewhere on the sensitive spectrum. Um, because when you're feeling so much, when you have so much information coming into this very open nervous system, it's more comfortable to grab onto something like food or even thought. Like thought is a huge part of this correlation. It's more comfortable to cling on to something heavy and solid than it is to be floating around in this mass amount of information that's coming at us. And it's almost like we exist with the world coming at us versus us, being coming at the world, which is a very different way of living. And yeah, so the addiction sensitivity correlation is huge, and really important to unravel.
Yeah. So how do you know if you're sensitive? Like people talk, like listening to this might say, that sounds like me. I also didn't know other people didn't feel this way. I'm sensitive to caffeine and sugar and emotions and environments. Like, is there like a test or like a self test, or is it kind of like if you resonate with what we're saying, like maybe you are highly sensitive? Like, how can somebody get more information or find out if they are?
So both, and if you're listening to this and you feel like, okay, yeah, that's me, then that's you. I mean, I'm not so hard and fast on checking boxes, but there are boxes to check. Elaine Aron, who's the pioneer for the trait, her website's escaping me, but you can just Google Elaine Aron sensitivity test, and there's, I think, like a 20 question sort of self-test where you can check boxes and really land in, am I or aren't I? And from there, I think the information of what it actually means, like going back to the mnemonic device and really unraveling the different parts of the trait is the first step to set up that container so that you can start accepting parts of yourself that you've been trying to fix your whole life. So I do think this information is super important from the get-go and starting to maneuver inside.
Yeah. What are some of those things that people are usually trying to fix about themselves that have a highly sensitive trait? Like, what are some of those things that are like
Yeah,
frustrating for the sensitives?
totally. It's funny because every day I work inside the trait, like there's more and more levels to it. I think we live on a planet right now that's sort of waking up to the fact that feeling is important, and people are just starting to accept that a mass amount of repressed feelings that they have from generations and generations and generations. And I think that's the number one thing. We've been taught that feeling's not okay, and as sensitive people, that's how we are. That's how we function. So more than anything else, it's like really coming home to everything I'm feeling in every moment is okay versus trying to push down that anger or strive to be something that we're not. I think that's the biggest one. And the addictions from there sort of fall away. It's like when we start to really accept our temperament, our sensitivity, our feeling self, then we don't need to reach for anything. So,
So you're
yay
saying
for
like if you
feeling.
feel, yeah, yay for feeling, yes. And we talk about that a lot in my programs too, is like getting out of the head and actually feeling like what's going on here. And that's a common question I get. Well, how do you tell if it's a thought that you're thinking that you should just stop thinking, or if it's a feeling that you're feeling? And like, do you try to just stop feeling something, stop feeling agitated or irritated or lonely or whatever it is? Or do you actually like go into it? And it's like this really interesting place. Like, where do you go, and how do you approach it? So
Yeah.
what are, and I think that we're starting to see like emotions, like our emotional environment affects the way we eat. I always thought you had to be like crying into Ben and Jerry's, just like, oh, I'm an emotional eater. But it's like, actually, I feel agitated. I feel irritated. Like,
Mm.
I feel like what I'm hearing from you is number one, like, recognize it. Like, you can feel these feelings. And it's when we start to compress them and just start to feel like I shouldn't be angry. Let's just get rid of this thought. Or as my mom says, just skip anger. That's a whole other video. Just skip anger.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I feel this, and it becomes uncomfortable. And I think sometimes food can be a nice way to be like, you know what, this I know makes me feel good, right? So one is feeling the emotions as they come up. Number two is like having some tools, it sounds like, besides food, to deal with all this stimulation and energy and feeling that's coming up for us. So like, do you have any really practical tools for women?
I do. I think that when we realize that we're more attuned to information, like we have lots of information coming in, we can step a little bit, like we can step outside and view ourselves from that perspective of, wow, like there's a ton of information coming through me, and recognizing like that transcendent state is our natural state. Most people are trying to access that transcendence. We really need to like come to what's physical. And the question I always ask myself is, what am I sensing? Because I think that line that you talked about of like feeling emotions, or like that tricky line of, should I go into this, or should I try and get out of this? It's sort of like that place of, ooh, that's all thought. So it's like when you can go into the place of, what am I actually sensing right now?
Right.
Like physical sensing. And this is something that I work with every day. This is the path of sensitivity, is really coming home to the body. Then you're working with what's real, like what's physical, and not transcendent after transcendent after transcendent. So that question of, what am I sensing?
Wow.
Is the starting point to really coming down and coming down and coming down. And I think that's a good place to start. And then from there, it's sort of like we realize that we have the power to choose how we want to feel. So once we start coming into our bodies and sensing, so it's like, what am I sensing? Okay, from here, what am I feeling, and how do I want to feel? And then we can start taking the action towards that feeling versus, do I need the food to make me feel this? Do I need to go out? And I work with a lot of creative people, a lot of entrepreneurs who are like, I need to do this in my business. And it's like thought after thought after thought. And when you come back into, what am I sensing? What am I feeling? How do I want to feel? It's coming from here versus up here. So I guess those are good starting places.
Yeah. So would it be like getting into your body in terms of like movement and yoga, or maybe not even meditation, like, but just things that make you feel like more grounded in your body?
Yeah.
I see you closing your eyes and can almost like see you like doing the work here, like where you kind of like just feel what's happening here, rather than like thinking, should I be something different? Should I be feeling this? Should I be, stop being so sensitive?
Yeah, I think it's all those things. I think back to myself 10 years ago when I was doing all the things, the yoga and the meditation, and it wasn't working for me in a way. It's so moment to moment. It's like, as I'm talking to you, can I feel my feet on the ground? Can I feel like my shoulder blades sitting on my spine? It's when I'm eating, can I sense? And can I sense here? And can I sense here? And can I sense here? Because you can't really think and feel at the same time, in my experience. So it is yoga, it is meditation, it is whatever way that you feel good in your body. And it's also moment to moment to moment to moment, am I sensing?
Wow.
And it's such a practice.
It's huge. Wow. I mean, I'm sure for most of us listening to you, it's like, whoa, what would my life be like if I went from thinking about stuff and trying to process all this information with my head that's coming in, and actually just like kind of like be in it and just feel. what's going on. And I love that you're saying this sensing thing, because I find a lot of women that I work with too, their sensitivity is kind of their superpower. Like they are ambitious or creative or artists or entrepreneurs, or like can have this really, like they can really see and feel into the future, which is kind of cool. And they want to create it. So what you're saying is, if we're hearing that and say, oh, that kind of sounds like me. I have a lot of ideas, but I don't actually do it. It's like, this is also practice to not only come home to your body and to feel more grounded and less anxious and, stimulated, but also to like, to eat better, to create more, to be more effective in your work.
Totally.
So this is a big deal.
It is. And that's so on par too, like seeing the visions, like we're sensing into the void of what is. It's like all of these possibilities, but then it's like overwhelm. So it's like, how do I sense and let the visions come through me? And like, that's the only place the action can come from. Otherwise, it's like you get tripped up in the emotional hard drive of, I have no idea how it's going to happen. Just complete overwhelm.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that like makes so much sense. So feet on the floor, feeling your body in space, like connecting to that moment by moment throughout the day, feeling yourself here rather than going off into outer space, which is so easy to do. And then to ask yourself, what am I sensing? Like, what am I actually sensing here? Which is super cool because it really taps you into your intuition. You don't have to think about it. It's like, what feels right? I love that. Is there anything else that you would add, like as a take home for the goodie bag? Like, try this out. This will be really helpful for you as well.
Let's see. Mornings. That's just the word that's coming in. Mornings are really important for sensitive people, to find ourselves. It's like almost like if you don't start sensing in the beginning of the day and giving yourself that time, it's so easy to get lost in the information overload. So really making mornings, if you're going to like allot a time to really focusing on sensing, morning's a good time to do it.
Perfect. And any tips with eating in particular, like foods that are good for sensitives or different eating practices that you find are really helpful for women to maybe move out of that super overwhelm and into like a more balanced and healthy relationship with food and their body?
Such a layered question now. Coming from being an emotional eater myself and all sorts of food sensitivities and all sorts of diets and information and that I've tried, like there's parts of me that are hesitant to give out direct food advice, but in my experience, quiet while eating, and it doesn't matter what you're eating. Just be quiet while you're eating. Set up time to be quiet. And then you can hear what's good for you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. I feel like that's the perfect note to end on. Just be quiet, be still. You'll hear what's good for you.
Totally.
Oh, thank you, Kate. I really appreciate you offering your wisdom and your guidance here. And Kate's website is kate-reed.com. KATE-REED.
READ.
READ. READ. Thank you. But check her out. Her blogs are amazing. She lives in Vermont, where I live too, and takes these beautiful pictures in nature. So it's just like a calm place to be, her website. So check it out. And Kate, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Bye.
Bye.